It's day 2 of the main event. Unfortunately, people can't get in the main event.
What do you think your goal is for the day? 1 million chips?
No, we want to set realistic goals. Anything above 300K is going to be great, honestly. Like, you don't want to put 1 million and then be like sad when you have 500K or something, which is way above average. We have a very good table, a lot of unknowns, and one very great player on our left that I was very worried about. Bracelet winner, a high stakes player. He plays the 100Ks, the 25Ks, so it's a very good opponent. I knew that my strategy going into this day is avoiding playing large out of position pots against a very good player.
Level 6, and I raised the 1600 with king 10 off from early position, 3 callers, and then the small blind squeezes the 7300. I have a couple of reads on this player because I looked up his Hendon mob, and he seems to be basically a competent player that plays a lot of live poker. Under that assumption, I felt like he would squeeze a bit wide here, so I click it back to 19,300 in position, knowing that he's probably going to have to fold a lot of very strong hands. If he calls, then we're very deep. I'm in position. I don't have one of the best hands to continue, but it doesn't really matter because it's not often that he's going to call. Folds back to him, and he does call. So already I'm probably going to be shutting down because it's not really a good spot to be in. The flop is king 6 to spades. He checks. Gin flop for us. We only lose to maybe king queen suited and ace king. I bet 1/4, which is a 10,600. He calls. The turn is a deuce of spades. I had the 10 of spades in my hand, I believe, or I thought I did on the turn. I didn't check back. He checks, and I said check back, assuming I had the 10 of spades, which I did not. And then the river is a 6 of diamonds, and he checks, and I go for a 27,000 bet, and he takes a long time and calls. And he told me after he had queens, which is a pretty tough spot, and luckily he basically just flopped trips and got a lot of chips. And at the same time, now the whole table knows I'm pretty crazy for 4-betting king 10 off early on, and that really helps because later on in the tournament, like, no one was 3-betting me light because they know I can just fucking blow up. English guy opens to 2,300 from under the gun. He's been opening very wide and playing really wide ranges. I look down at 6-5 of clubs in the cutoff. We are 90 bigs effective. I decide to 3-bet instead of flat because he's too wide. And he raised at 7,000. Goes back to him. He calls. The flop is 6-5 deuce with 2 spades. He checks. I bet, I believe, 1/3. Could go really big size here, but against a player like him that is probably going to just like check call any 2 overs, it's fine to just go 1/3 because we want to keep him in the pot. He calls. The turn is the jack of hearts. Puts out another flush draw. He checks. I bet 18,300, which I believe is around 66% of the pot now. He calls, and then the river is the queen of clubs, which is a really good card because both flush draws missed. But then he decides to lead 30,500. Which actually was like a really annoying lead because, like, I mean, usually there's not many bluffs here, but this was kind of like, I can't fold 2 pair, I block sets. I only lose to maybe like 1 or 2 combos of queen jack suited, and then sometimes like queens and jacks, but I think he would go bigger with those. So I ended up calling, and it just shows ace-4 hearts for just the random bluff. I mean, it's kind of a good bluff, I guess, because like, it'll definitely get me to fold some weaker, some stronger hands, 1-pair hands. I have a lot of hands against this guy. We played over 10 pots against each other. A lot of them were either 3-bet or check raise. He was a very tough opponent because he just was relentless. But I eventually ended up getting the best of him. And yeah, you're going to see some of those really fun hands coming up soon.
The next hand was up against Jeremy Ausmus. We are around 100 big blinds deep, and I look down at ace king suited in the small blind. I decide to just call. Plan here is to actually limp raise. I call, and he checks behind. The flop is 7-6-5 rainbow with the 7 of diamonds. I have ace king of diamonds. I check, and our opponent bets pot. Unfortunately, I'm already not very happy about this situation because obviously this specific board favors him a lot more. But with 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw, I have to call. Turn is the ace of clubs. I now improve to top pair, top kicker. I check, and he bets pot again. This is already a very difficult situation, but given that I know he's a very good player, I know that he could have a lot of bluffs here. He has all 8-3 offsuit, you know, Jack-9, a lot of these type of hands that have some equity that can benefit from bluffing me off a lot of hands here. So I have to actually call. The river is the king of clubs. So now there's 3 clubs on the board. And this is where it gets kind of interesting. I have top 2 pair, and I believe I now beat a lot of his 2 pairs. He can have a7, he can have a6, 7-6, 7-5. All these hands that we now beat, and we can get value from. And I decided to put ace-king into my merge range, which means I'm gonna lead here the same way I would lead with some of my flushes to basically get max value from his 2 pairs, but also limit my losses against better hands. He can't just raise the river with some of his straights, or let's say if he has a set somehow, he can't raise the river for value because I definitely have flushes in my range too, right? So I lead 1/3 on the river with 2 pair. He takes a long time and calls, and I had a feeling that when he took that long that I was actually beat because it looked like he was considering a raise. And I end up showing 2 pair, and he shows 9-8 for the flop straight. And he says I probably should have raised that, which I actually agree. In the end, we lost the minimum. We showed a bit of creativity with our line against our opponent, so I don't know how he approached this, if he thought that was very creative or very fishy. It is definitely an exploit that I built. Yeah, I think the rest of the table also noticed that and was like, all right, this guy got some moves.
We have the sexiest poker player in Canada with us to update us on how the main event is going. Luckily for me, I've had the purest level of all time and doubled my stack from 130 to like around 280. How's it going for you?
So I showed up on time, ready to play at 11, and I've been in line for 2 hours. Sat down 5 minutes before break started, played 2 hands, folded. Things are good, you know, we haven't lost the pot yet.
It might be the biggest main event of all time. We'll be back in 2 hours. Thank you.
Up against our UK opponent again. I open ace-jack, and we end up 3-way to the flop. The flop is ace-queen-7 of 2 spades. I bet, and our UK player calls on the button. We're heads up to the turn. Turn is a jack. I go for a bet again. I believe I bet around 66% of the pot. He just calls, and usually this type of opponent, if he turned the straight or if he has 2 pair or set, he always shoves the turn. So I knew that like I'm ahead for sure. The river is an 8 of spades, unfortunately, which completes a lot of the flushes, especially because the ace, the queen, and the 8 are all spades, meaning he just has a lot of these baby flush cards that he's playing like 100% frequency. So I check, he shoves, and I reluctantly fold 2 pair, and he shows the camera 7-5 of spades. I had a lot of fun with this guy. He was actually showing a lot of his cards to the camera after, and so in this hand, I 3-bet for probably the 27th time because everyone on the table just has a calling range. No one 3-bets, so everyone's, you know, putting in a lot of money in a pot. I have ace-3 of clubs on the button. I just go pretty big, and these guys are just chatting during the hand about like, this monkey dude is gonna raise us again.
They both have cards.
And they both
cards
still have cards, just like trash talking me, and eventually both end up folding because they don't want to bust. Main event is fun, guys. This specific hand where I am on the turn, he shoves 2 times the pot on the double flush board. And after opening under the gun, and I have top pair with the nut flush draw, and I'm just like literally an agonizing pain because I feel like I'm probably behind, but this guy has been kind of blasty enough where he could be shoving sub flush draws himself. It took me a while to call. I had to call 40K into 100K, so I need around 40% equity, which I don't really think I had. I need to double check the spot. I actually think I should be folding. It's weird when you have like very strong part of your range and the nut flush draw, but the pot odds are just not in your favor. Maybe I can look this up later on tonight after I finish the day and make sure I don't make this mistake again.
I have King Jack in middle position, and I raise 2,500, and he calls from the small blind, and the big blind calls. The flop is King 8, great flop for me. It checks to me. I go for a 25% c-bet, which I believe in this case was around 2,200. Small blind calls and the big blind folds. The turn is a jack of diamonds, which is the gen card. Our opponent leads 5,000, which was very bizarre and does not make sense. But like, this guy was really like clicky and very active and really loved playing big pots for like, oh, you need to like trap him and, you know, keep him in the pot and just call like, no, we're super deep. I want to put money in the pot here. So I raised to 18,000, knowing that he's probably going to continue with a lot of his hands, especially with how active and aggressive I've been playing. And then he clicks it to 40,000, which was just like, what the hell? I was not expecting that. Obviously, I'm not going anywhere, and I call. And then the river is the 9 of diamonds. And our opponent checks, and he has around 50,000 behind. The pot at this point is like randomly become 98,000 or something like that. I go all in, and he starts taking a long time, you know, thinking about it, saying stuff to himself. Don't have King Jack, you wouldn't raise that. And that's exactly why you raise these type of hands, is because sometimes people don't think that you would fast play the strongest part of your range. They think you would trap. He takes a while, then you hear him say,
I'm actually thinking about folding a full house tonight.
Forever ends up folding and just shows the 8 of diamonds. He made it seem like he folded pocket 8s, but like that doesn't make sense for someone to say they're gonna fold a full house and then they just show one card. So I really think he just had 8 something of diamonds. If anything, like, kudos, you folded a flush. I have a lot of chips now, and this player really hates us.
Your table chip leader, so you're waiting.
Yes, hello. It's dinner break and there's Chinese in the background for some reason. I have 310,000. Jeremy Ausmus busted, so on my left now is a American random player. My table is amazing. I have a great image. Everyone's both scared and terrified and at the same time think I'm crazy, so it's amazing. If I get some hands, no one's gonna fold to me, and I know who I can get away with bluffing. There's still 4 more hours on the day. I'm gonna go have some nice Chipotle because it's the only thing I can eat. And the plan is to come back and try to get more and more chips. But if I stay at the same 310k stack, that's also amazing. You just want to make day 3. It's not a race; it's a marathon. The classic one-liner.
Are up against our nemesis again. I look down at King 4 of spades and I raised to 3,000. I was opening very wide because the table was very tight, and in general I'm just like getting these raises through. I'm just getting to play against big blind mostly, so my range was super wide. The opponent to my left, as you see here, good solid player, flats, and then it folds to the big blind, our nemesis, who raises it up to 9,000. Know what his range is? It's basically like kings plus and maybe ace king suited sometimes, but the price is too good for me to fold, so I call King 4 of spades here against the 9,000 3-bet, and the other player calls as well. The flop comes 5-3 deuce with 2 spades, which is basically like the best flop ever. Big blind, the nemesis goes for a 1/3 pot c-bet. I have an open-ended flush draw, a straight draw and a flush draw. I have infinite equity up against anything. The only hands I'm really doing bad against is like maybe ace something of spades, and obviously like an overpair or like up against a set. I thought about this hand a lot after, because I was just considering if I could possibly just go all in here and then make sure that the guy after me folds all his ace high flush draws. It's a very interesting spot. Not a spot we should be in because we don't really peel King 4 of spades usually in these situations, but obviously given everything I mentioned, we had to. So I raised to 35,000. The other guy folded, goes back to big blind. He puts it in for, I believe, 80,000. I call, and he has aces, of course, as we expected. And somehow he fades the all the outs on the planet. I believe I have around like 60% equity in this spot against his hand, even though he has aces and an overpair, which is crazy. But yeah, we double up our nemesis and he's feeling real good. He's like, yeah, finally beat this guy. But that wasn't the end of the battle, sir.
2 hours left. We have 200k. Lost a really big pot right before the end of the break. Would have had 400,000, but it's still okay. We have 100 big blinds. Everyone's gonna be kind of tired now and they want to go sleep, and then I'm gonna be wide awake and just like punishing everyone.
Start talking to him. Turns out he's also a Lebanese guy. Really nice to meet people like this on the table from time to time. I gave him a shirt. I saw him wear it the next day to try to be lucky. I did see him unfortunately lose, so it doesn't look like the shirt worked. I'm sorry, man. Hey, everyone, guess what time it is? It's time to play against our nemesis again. We're nearing the end of the day. I've doubled this guy. We've battled a lot. I still have a lot of chips. I have around 200,000 chips. And I've been opening really wide just because the table is like trying to play very tight and scared. They want to make day 3. So I look down at 5-4 hearts in early position and I open. And it folds to our nemesis in the big blind. I know he's gonna defend without even looking at his cards, so that's why we can open kind of wide. The flop is the Queen 6 deuce with the deuce of hearts. I go for my standard continuation bet of 33%, and we get check raised on kind of the big side. He goes for 17,000. This is an automatic continue for me with a nut draw and a backdoor heart draw. So know that this type of player was kind of like doing some things that he really shouldn't. I'm expecting him to be a bit too wide in the spot, like check raising really weak hands that he shouldn't. In general, I would continue even wider because I know he's just gonna like check give up sometimes, and I have position, we're super deep. I'm gonna be able to just take down the pot just by applying some pressure. Turn comes the Queen of Hearts. Very interesting card because it now gives us a flush draw. But in general, our range is very strong here as well, because we're going to be continuing mostly with all our Queen X. And most of our Queen X are actually stronger, like Ace Queen, King Queen. He has a lot of weak Queen X. I believe he also is going to have a lot of like flush draws and a lot of random bluffs, as mentioned. I am facing a bet of 17,500, which is kind of like what he check raised to. I feel like when there's 2 flush draws in this board, the way this guy was playing, if he has a queen, especially a strong queen like Ace Queen, King Queen, he would go bigger. Even if he has any queen, he's in general gonna go big. So I kind of was considering raising here, but the way this guy was playing, it made me realize like he's not gonna give up much, right? So I have to continue with 5-4 hearts, but I'm not super excited about it. I'm just hoping that I get to complete one of my draws. I have a flush draw and a straight draw, and a 5 or a 4 might be good as well. River is the king, and our opponent goes for a 20,000 bet. This doesn't really make much sense, honestly. I was pretty confused, and I have one of the worst hands I could have here. I actually had a feeling he might have King X of spades, and he's going for like this weird value bet. I do raise to 80,000. Really felt like this was gonna work a very large percentage of the time, just because of how he bet on the turn on the river. Like the sizings in general looked very weak. I have one of the worst hands possible. He takes a long time and folds and says something like, "You're probably never bluffing here," and I'm like, "Oh lol, okay." You know, we don't really let him know that, you know, I had 5-4 hearts. But now if he's watching the video, he's gonna know. Getting this massive bluff through against our nemesis feels so good. And you think this is where it ends? Hell no. After our opponent folds, you know, I'm collecting chips. Next hand, I got Ace 10 of diamonds. Boom. Sexy. Let's open that shit. Our nemesis calls from the small blind, and the big blind also calls. The flop comes Queen 9-3 with the 9 of diamonds. I go for a regular c-bet. Our nemesis check raises us to, I believe, 18,000 or maybe 20. Again, we are super deep. I don't have much, but I have a lot of good backdoor equity. I can still be ahead of King Jack, Jack 10, some 10-8 suited, Jack 8 suited. The way he was playing, he has all these hands. And it's a kind of an easy hand to play. Like if I don't improve on the turn, I'm just gonna fold. If he checks, I can decide bluffing. So we call, and the turn is actually the Jack of diamonds. Oh baby, the best card in the deck. Like it's unbelievable how good that card is. Like I have an open-ended straight draw, I have the nut flush draw now. Our opponent goes for actually a very big bet. Went for a 42,000 bet, which was really big. It's basically nearly pot sized. And I was very conflicted here because I was considering going all in when, you know, it's one of the best cards ever. But the thing is, if you go all in this spot, you need to just think, what do I actually accomplish by going all in? When he's representing such a polarized range and just saying like, I have value, he can have sets, he can have 2 pairs, he can have the nuts, he can have king 10 suited. Well, you don't really accomplish much when you go all in. Have to call because I'm getting a pretty good price given how many outs I have, and I do think that if I get the flush on the river that doesn't complete any straight draws, we're probably gonna get all the chips in. Believe it or not, the river is the perfect card that you can think of. 6 of diamonds. We have the nuts on the river, and our opponent actually goes for another weird bet like the last hand. He goes for a 40,000 bet, which is kind of like a 1/3 pot bet, kind of a block bet. It didn't make much sense, to be honest. And with the flush, the nuts, I go all in on the river. It takes a bit of time, and as you can see, he just finished his massage, and I waited until his massage was over because I feel like it's more likely he's gonna call when the massage lady is leaving, you know, like he's just gonna be like, all right, the massage is done and I guess my tournament is done. But he's shown that he likes to be a hero, so I was pretty sure he's never gonna fold on a river. I took a bit of time just to kind of, you know, make it seem like I'm considering a bluff the same way I did last time when I bluffed. And he ends up calling us, and boom, boom. We are chip leader on the table with 3 hands left on the day. And this was the best way ever to finish a day, to be honest. I had like so much excitement built within me because I've been battling with this guy all day, and it feels good that in 2 back-to-back hands we bluff him for a very big pot and then we get the nuts and just make all the money because of all these crazy plays we've done during the day. It finally paid off.
Well, howdy. Just won 2 massive pots at the end of the day, and I have 434,000 going into 2,500 big blind.
Dude, that was the best hand of the summer.
Dude, that was
against that guy.
Oh man, battling all day long against that guy, and he's got all that macho, like, oh, I'll keep getting him. He was paying for a massage. I'm like, this guy's not folding the river. His massage is over, he's not folding to me.
I know you didn't want to celebrate because that's not, you know, you don't,
yeah, it's still day 3.
Nice. I'm sitting in your seat and I'm celebrating as if I were you at the table. Going to day 3 with a woo!